Hello students. In our earlier video lecture, we have gone through some of the literary terms, and this is the last literary terms that we are going to study. See, in American literature, these literary movements are very much relevant in the literature, especially the novels, dramas, has brought the features of realism much more say detailed way, much more effectively in American so-called novelists. So Mark Twain is called as one of the literary writer whose um, masterpieces brings us the realism in the literature, especially at the same time. This realism is hinting at the very much say the the characteristic features of the novels. At the same time, the characteristic features of the movement. It's a kind of a technique. It's adopted in multiple ways, and this technique is reflected in the selection of the subject matter, the plot, at the same time the character, the setting, and every other aspects of so-called novel. So this brings us very much close to the realistic fiction of the so-called say the environment. The literary writing, the realistic writing, it's a concerted movement. So the trend is used. It is to identify, this realism is used to identify a realistic portrayal in the novels, and at the same time to designate a literary movement in literature. So in this way, we do have this type of so-called uses of realism. Realism and naturalism, these are very much interconnected literary terms and concepts. What does this naturalism stands for? So naturalism is more accurate, more detailed type of description in the novels and dramas. It's a kind of a way the author goes very much realistic, no, to such an extent as to depict the realistic character, realistic portrayal, realistic setting, and day-to-day businesses of the characters, in day-to-day transaction of the characters, in the social environment, in the plot, or in the subject matter of the novel. So it's a kind of a treatment that the author gives to the selection of the subject matter. At the same time, the author uses a very realistic use of technique to render these material, this raw material for the novel to create a kind of an effect in the whole novel. So, in such a way, the novelist tries to bring the realism to such a deeper level, to such a deeper level as it seems to be the part of a nature. It seems to be just an intrinsic development. So, such a rendering of these so-called things are, of course, there. Okay. It's a it's a treatment. It's a particular mode of fiction that was developed by the authors in accordance with the philosophical thesis, philosophical ideas and concepts that were propounded by the authors during the post-Darwinian, say, thesis and innovation. As we know, Sir Charles Darwin is a very remarkable scientist in so-called biology. He propounded his book, and it was a remarkable book. It revolutionized the entire concept of the human evolution, okay, theory of human evolution. The thesis that he published in 1854, and that book was remarkable to such an extent with the publication of this first book, first edition. More than 2 lakh copies were sold out. So in those era. So it is naturally that this book has revolutionized the entire concept of human evolution, human origin. So it is entirely natural. Human being is entirely in the nature. The man is put in the natural background. Human being as a part of nature, as an animal. There is no scope for human being to play in the social or religious or spiritual order of this universe. So basically, human being is treated just like an animal with all those animal drives. And these animal drives are in the human body. The characters are, or the character of a human being is determined by heredity, what he inherited from his parents, from his biological and biological father and mother. See, and especially the environment from which he has taken birth and progressed. So these drives that we see are especially hunger, possessions. Human being is definitely possessive, sexuality, okay, and these are subject to change as per the social and economic forces. So these are the features that we see behind the naturalism. These features makes man much more naturalistic, put in the natural background. So there were some of the major remarkable philosophers and especially the thought-provoking novelists, and these were Emily Zola. Her Nana. The book is very famous. Okay, Frank Norris, Stephen Crane, Theodore Drezier, all they presented the objectivity and elaborate documentation, the much more objectivity is presented in the form of novels, or they resort to use with the medical frankness, biological, say the changes that occurs in the human body, in the human psychology, and human physique, whatever. So all these drives, these are animal drives, these are sexual desires, glandular secretions, and all that make the man develops a man. And these features that we see are reflected in the human psychology, human body, and entire human physique. So such a detailed description up to the glandular secretions we see. Such novels are, of course, the product of psychology, product of drives, powerful drives. And of course, if the heroes are there, if the characters are depicted in such a, say, with such a forces, such a novels are definitely in the tragedy. Okay. So the author's author resorts to naturalistic selection and management of subject matter in its austere manner. These are the apparent features of the novels. So the examples that we see are reflected not just in drama, not just in say novels, but at the same time, few dramas were also reflecting these so-called naturalistic, say, features or types of writings. So we have Norman Mailer's novel, The Naked and Dead, using O'Neill's drama, okay. William Dean Howells, a modern instance, is very good. Theodore Dreiser, an American tragedy, so tells us. Emile Zola's, as I told you, Nana is the novel, and Joyce's Ulysses. These are the features of this particular naturalistic type of writing. So, naturally, as a student of English, we must feature and we must find what are these naturalistic so type of writings that we see in the literature. As an American term or as an American so-called prevalent concept reflecting in American history or literature, we must use these in our so-called study. So this makes us this particular concept. Okay, try to re-watch, re-listen, and try to memorize it. For more on this, you will find M.H. Brown's book, Oxford Dictionary of Literary Terms, and other relevant so-called material or history of American literature will help you to prepare your answer. Thank you.